All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the room. I'm just letting some people in and we'll get started. So, if you're coming here for the first time, welcome. It's great to have you. You're in amongst beautiful people in a beautiful room with some beautiful energy. My name is Kelly Mabel, and I've been hosting conversations of the 3P nature for about almost a year now. So it'll be a year in the end of December. And I've been meeting beautiful people such as the speaker today, Claire, who's in the room. Hi, Claire. Welcome. She could say hello. Hi. I'll do some little logistics before we begin. Yeah, go ahead. Say hi. Say hi.
Hi.
Hi. So, some of the things that we uncover here are topics that are important and necessary for certain people, and today is no different. Claire is here sharing some of the work that she's done with her organization called the Almond Tree, and some of the ways in which has seen her own wisdom and the principles and our own personal innate well-being and the ways in which Claire found, where she is today. And I just feel very blessed and honored to be able to host people in this room in these types of conversations where you might not find it elsewhere. And we might not be able to get together in these smaller rooms or intimate spaces where we can have a voice and share what's happening for us as well. And be in discussion with those people like Claire who have gone before us and have found, ways to unfold what her learning has been. And so, Claire, I'm really happy that you're here. And we had a beautiful conversation not so long ago about thealmondtree.org. And I think for the purpose of the room, Claire, it's always up to the speaker in which way they want to do things and how you'd like to open or handle the room. But often there's some Q&A and there's some unfolding, I think, which would be good because some people may not know who you are. So if you want to share a little bit about your experience, your strength, your hope, your wisdom in just Claire shoots as Claire, and then maybe we can go on to something that you've seen or the picture that was unfolded for you. How does that sound?
That sounds great, Kelly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to put myself on mute and welcome everybody.
Thank you, Kelly, so much for inviting me to come and share today. And hello to everyone. So nice to see you all. I'm going to change it actually so that I can see you all at the moment. I'm just going to change it to gallery. Oh, that's great. So I can see everyone. Hi. That's much better. So I am English, if you couldn't already tell from my accent. I came across the principles in, I think 2010. So about 11 years ago. And before that, I was a coach. I was a very traditional coach with lots and lots of training, using lots of tools and techniques. And before that, even, I made television documentaries for 20 years, working both for the BBC, and I had my own independent television company for a while, and I also worked for Channel 4. So I had done that for a long time. And then I did the classic thing. My daughter was born, and I didn't want to spend my time making films when I really wanted to be with my daughter. I wasn't expecting to have children. I was told that it was very unlikely that I would. So I felt that it was a real blessing, and I really wanted to be there for her. And so I made a career change into coaching, and that worked really well. I had a company. We taught in all sorts of environments. We taught in business environments. We taught in schools. We also taught kind of open courses where anyone could come along. And as I said before, essentially we were teaching very, the GROW model. And it was all about tools and techniques and vision boards and all sorts of things like that. And it was successful. But I realized at some point that that it wasn't transformative, if that makes sense. So people were having real change, they were getting impacted, but it didn't last, because I started to notice that if people got very upset, they didn't really necessarily have access to what they had learned, because they were too upset to be able to utilize it. And I became a little bit despondent, and I thought, gosh, maybe I, moving from TV into coaching wasn't the right move. And I was thinking of giving up coaching, to be honest. And then I came across Michael Neal. I was taken by my business partner at the time, in fact, to see Michael talk in a place in London called Alternatives, which is a big church that many very well-known leaders of the kind of new age way of thinking, or alternative ways of thinking, used to come, and I think probably still do. Actually, I'm not sure if it's resumed after COVID. I know it's online, but I don't know if it's still in person. Anyway, so I went along to this talk, and I was really touched by something that Michael said. I can't remember much about the words he used, but I definitely heard something beyond the words. I heard something spiritual in nature, and that really piqued my interest. As Kelly mentioned, I have amongst the things that I do, I have a community interest company at the moment with a guy called Julian Fraser, who I know has already been on this podcast. And I think he probably spoke about the almond tree a little bit as well when he was there with you. But the reason I formed that with him is because I have a disability. I have something called cerebral palsy. And that disability has been throughout my life a prompt for further and deeper exploration into, I would say, the nature of life, what goes on behind what you can see. And so I've always been interested in spirituality. And so what I heard behind Michael's words was really hopeful. And I thought, gosh, maybe there is a way in which I can work with people and be a coach and point them towards their spiritual nature. And so then I went up to Michael afterwards. There was a very long queue at the time, and he just had a new book come out, and people were lining up to have the book signed, and the whole church was filled to the rafters. There were no spaces left anywhere, and I kind of waited patiently in line. And during his talk, he'd been asking the questions. The basic question, what would it take? And he'd been riffing off that. And so I very cheekily went up to him and said, hi, Michael, my name's Claire. What would it take to get an hour of your time? I was so cheeky. And he kind of looked at me and said, have you got a piece of paper? And I did. And he said, here, this is the number of my assistant, and email her and we can chat. And I went back to my friend who taken me along to the talk, and I said, oh, I'm going to talk to Michael. He told me to email him. And she was like, yeah, right, he'll never come back to you. But that wasn't the case, because Michael's always very true to his word. And I ended up talking to Michael, and then I became his apprentice. And when I became his apprentice, he had just transitioned. He was just transitioning over from all the NLP stuff into the 3 Ps. And I spent a year learning with him, and I went on Supercoach Academy. And even back then, Supercoach Academy was a very different course from what it is nowadays. It was basically a number of different weekends, and each weekend had a different teacher. And on one of those weekends, there was George and Linda Pransky. And on the second day of the weekend, I suddenly felt the whole room, everybody in the room, drop into this incredibly powerful feeling. And I didn't really know what that was at that time, but I was deeply impacted by it. And I became even more curious about the principles. And then when my apprenticeship with Michael came to an end, I just happened to be, Kelly, stop me if I'm going on too much. Or Is it fine? Just please interrupt me.
Absolutely. No, carry on.
If this is, it might just, I don't know what you, what it is exactly that you're hoping to hear, but
This is beautiful. I think everybody would agree. This is beautiful. Carry on.
Okay, so yeah, please let me know. Please feel free to interrupt me at any time. Please feel free to ask me a question at any time. I really, I don't want this to be me rambling on. So anyway, and so then as it happened, life happens, I was looking for somebody. I was wondering whether there was anybody in England who was teaching the principles, and I came across this guy called Aaron Turner, and he, I don't know if you guys know who he is, but probably, and he had just moved to London, and he had just left Francie and Associates, and he was just about to set up One Thought with Mara. And I remember that I found his mobile number. It was very easy to contact him, and I phoned him up, and we went and met and had a coffee in London, and then from that moment on, he was my mentor for 2 years. So basically, I had a lot of input at the very beginning, which was really, really wonderful. And as a consequence, later on in my career, I ended up being on faculty for both of them. And they both run very, very different courses. So if you guys have got any questions about any of that stuff, feel free to ask me, because I think I'm the only person who's been on faculty for both of them. So, in my personal coaching practice, what happened was I was so impacted by what I'd seen that I just decided to switch. I didn't go through this transition period that some people go through where they kind of move from one way of working to another. I just dropped everything that I had learned before because it no longer made sense to me. And I phoned up some of my old clients and I said to them, look, I'd learned something new, and it's about the nature of thought and how it impacts our experience. Would you be interested to learn about it? Because it's really changed my whole outlook on life. And they all said yes. And so I was very lucky that I had people to speak to very, very quickly and people to kind of work with. And it's funny now, so that was like 10 years ago. And it's funny now because back then I really thought, and I think this is quite true because I'd obviously, being on faculty, I've done quite a lot of mentoring of people who want to be either coaches or practitioners. And I think a lot of people go through this. But in the beginning, I really thought it was about how clearly I was able to articulate mind, thought, and consciousness. So I would have people come and be with me, mainly face-to-face at that time. And I would do my very best articulation. And to their credit, some people were really impacted, but I don't think it had anything to do with my articulation at the time. And now I see it so differently, so differently. Now I'm not that interested in the dogma anymore, or the form, let's say. Maybe dogma is a bit too harsh a word. I'm not that interested in the form. And so sometimes I'll have a client and I might never mention the principles. That's rare, but sometimes. But it's really not about the form. But I'm sorry to stop, but I'm just thinking how to say this. It's hard to put into words. What I have an increasingly deeper respect for is the space that unfolds if you allow it to be there. The space for a person to connect with their own wisdom. The space for people to remember, for want of a better word, the totality of their being. Having a conversation about thought and how it creates your reality and that kind of stuff is helpful for people. It definitely helps people. But reconnecting people with their spiritual nature is, for me, where the transformation happens. And that's that's kind of what I'm up to in my work. And I'm really lucky because I've been able to work in many different environments. So at the moment I have, as well as the organization that Julian and I have founded, which I will come on to and speak about later, I have my own company, which is called Potent Coaching. It's kind of not really, it's kind of, although it's a company, I'm quite hard to find. I don't have a website or anything like that. So I work by referral, and I like working that way. But I'm lucky enough to work in companies, but also with individuals, and also with teenagers. And there was a time when I thought that I used to think that there was a difference between those groups, that going into a business was different from talking to a teenager or talking to an individual. But then I realized over time that all you're ever doing is talking to an individual, even if there's a group. Even if I'm talking to a group of, I don't know, 30 people in a company, you're still only talking to one person. And yes, there is something magical that happens with the collective consciousness, I find, of a group, but it's still one person's insight that changes their world. And I think that's super cool. And I never, ever get tired of it. And I was having a conversation. So now I work mainly over Zoom, partly because of COVID, but partly because I have such an international client base that it would be impossible to meet them in person. And I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today, and I said something, in the course of this conversation, he heard something and the light went on and I saw it. Like, even over Zoom, I saw that shift. There was like, you guys know, I don't really know Kelly who comes to your group. I'm so sorry, but if you guys do work with other people, you know exactly what I'm saying. And I saw, and I never get tired of that. And I absolutely love that it's not about me. That it's not about me. Obviously, I have an understanding or a grounding that enables me to get out of the way and let the space unfold, for want of a better word, and that has taken years to really, really understand. But yeah, I feel I love working with people. Personally, I'm all about connection. Like, if you were to ask me, what's the most important thing to you in life? Connection, like connecting with other people. I think that's partly why I used to make documentaries as well, all about storytelling and connecting and finding out about people, endlessly fascinating to me. And I think, I know I'm jumping around here all over the place, but when I was younger, I went traveling. I was lucky enough to go traveling for quite an extensive period of time through Southeast Asia. And actually, I did transverse the whole of the world, although I didn't stop in every country. Some of it was in an airplane, obviously. And because of my curiosity and openness, and because of my disability, I met a lot of healers from many, many different traditions. And because I always find that healers like to have a go. They're like, sorry, what can I, how can I help here? And because I'm open and curious, I'm up for it. So I have had a lot of really, really remarkable experiences on that level. But the one thing I think I learned throughout that whole journey was the integrity. So connection to me coupled with integrity. So if you're going to sit with another human being and they're going to essentially open up their soul to you, it's really important to me anyway, to treat that with the respect and integrity and grace kind of that it deserves. I hope that makes sense. So the reason for telling you about that is, so when I came to the principles, it wasn't that it wasn't like, for me, I came to the principles and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I've never heard anything like this before in my life. For me, it was much more like, oh, this is a way in which I can articulate what I've seen in a way that is universally acceptable to everyone. So I can go into a business and talk about state of mind, because I find that in businesses, state of mind is very, very palatable. And then over a time with the business, you know, I think that most people that I've come across too are aware of something bigger than themselves in their lives, and that they're connected to something bigger. And so, but state of mind is a very safe place to kind of begin. And then I've lost my train of thought, sorry. The universality, that was what I was talking about. So you talk about it in one way in a business, but then there's you can be sitting with another person who already has a deep sense of their own spiritual nature and have this really, really beautiful, in-depth conversation in which I find I'm just as likely to see something as the person opposite me. I come from the perspective that actually we're all equals. There may be some things I've seen, but I'm equally interested, if not more interested, about what others have seen and in seeing more. You often hear people talk about the kind of, especially people who've been working with the principles for 40 years or more, that it's a never-ending and never-evolving, deepening journey. And I think that is part of the beauty of it. And in my own life, even though I said before that the principles gave me a way of articulating what I had already seen, there were many things in my life that I hadn't seen about me, and ways in which I was allowing my thinking to impact my day-to-day experience. And I think that in the last, since meeting Michael, I'm much freer than I ever was in myself. I'm much more present. I'm much more engaged with life. I didn't realize before that I wasn't, but now I see that I am. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the almond tree because Kelly asked me, but I would much rather this was a discussion, to be quite honest. I find just talking like this quite challenging, and I would love for it to be a discussion. So the almond tree is something that, so I mentioned before that I have a disability, and then I met Julian when we were both on the very first One Thought course. So as I said before, I met Aaron when he came to England, and I went on the very first course that he taught. And at that time it was him, Mara, and Linda Pransky. And Linda Pransky had taught both, kind of been the mentor to both Aaron and Mara. So it was fascinating, and the three of them together were just incredible. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine that must have been it was amazing. I'm sorry, I keep losing my train of thought. Oh yes, sorry. Yes. I met sorry. I met Julian on the very first One Thought course, and liked him immediately. I mean, he's just a really wonderful, warm-hearted, lovely human being. You know, he deeply rooted in his Judaism and the spirituality that gives him, and the way in which he and Joe, his wife, have navigated living with and having Hassia as part of their family, I think is like remarkable. It's really amazing, and it's something that many people can learn from. Not just people who are looking after someone with an illness or a disability. I think there's many lessons for everyone there. And so Julia and I had been friends since, I think that was 2011. So we've been friends since then. And a few years ago, we were talking, and he was saying how much he wanted to teach the principles to parents with disabled children, because he could see how much they were struggling. He was meeting parents when he went to pick up Hasia from school, or he went to some kind of gathering where the parents gathered, and he could see how much struggle there was. And I was really encouraging him. I was like, go for it, Julian, you'll be brilliant. You've got so much to teach, you brilliant. So I was like his champion on the side going, yay. And every so often he'd go into a school and he'd do it, and it would be really well received. And then he'd stop and whatever, and because he was very busy with other things in his life. And then last year, both Michael and Aaron decided to change up the way in which they delivered their courses. So neither of them required a faculty anymore. And so that suddenly opened up a whole lot of time for me. And I went to Julian and I said, Julian, how about if we do something to help? You know, originally it was parents looking after disabled children. How about if we actually do something together? Because, you know, maybe that would be really cool. And for years, actually, I'd kind of really steered away from anything to do with my disability in my work life. But for some reason, I felt now seems like the time. So we decided to form the Almond Tree, and it's a really beautiful thing I've been really, you know, life kind of, we made a plan and then life kind of took over. In the sense that originally it was just me and Julian, and then Linda Pransky, because of George and what happened with George with his stroke, that came on board, and it's just a really amazingly heartwarming thing to do. It's still very much in its infancy. I'm really loving it, and I'm getting the opportunity to use some of my TV skills, because I'm interviewing lots of people for a strand that we've got called Stories of Hope, and I'm just getting them to tell their stories, really, about what they've seen that's been helpful to them, and hopefully it will help others. So that's the story of the Almond Tree.
I have to say that I often sit here and I feel like I've got the speakers back, like I'm right here for you. And yet there's this place where I kind of go, oh no. You know, so I have to say the truth is that, like, I wanted to hold space, yet I just want you to know I'm right here if you need me.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's so many topics that you brought up, and really, I just wanted to shed a little more illumination for those that may not be familiar. Julian's daughter, who has disabilities, is who Claire was speaking about. And I believe that you were speaking that he was taking her into presentations.
No, he didn't take her. He went to speak to other parents
Okay.
living
Okay.
with a disabled child.
Yeah, okay, terrific. And for those unfamiliar with Aaron Turner and Michael Neal and some of the people in the principles, there's a lot of people here that are fully engaged in the principles, but these are some people that have been around for a long time, and I think it's amazing that you were actually at the same time working on these faculties. So you must have seen some variance and difference and
Yes, yes.
similarities. Yeah. And how did you keep separate? I'd love to know that. How did you really find, like often it's like one for all. So how did you separate yourself in that? Because I believe it is a spiritual understanding in both arenas, but yet you were serving two different people, two different real big leaders, really.
So the form might be different slightly or have differences, but the orientation of the pointing is the same.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's great. Shall we open up to?
Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
It does actually. Just to reiterate, what I'm hearing is, two people can have different messages of the same nature. And everybody, both these leaders are pointing into the realms of the spiritual nature before their words, their courses, their deliveries. And if I understand you correctly, you're holding space for that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. That's awesome. So it doesn't seem like a good time to open it up to anybody who has questions. And
Great time. Please,
yeah,
I'd love to have a dialogue.
yeah. Sometimes we take all this information in and people talk, and then it's like, oh, what do I want to ask? What do I want to say? And I actually, as a host, sit here and go, which point do I want to talk to? And this is one of my things. But Greg's got his hand up. So hello, new friend. How are you?
Hi guys. Hi Claire. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Greg. Hi, Greg.
Hi. I'm curious about how the three P's has impacted your parenting. So I just
Mm.
kind of become aware of the principles earlier this year in March, and I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I found, I don't know, I'm really questioning a lot of my go-to parenting techniques and things, and questioning kind of some of the stuff. And I've started encouraging my wife and my kids to get coaching of their own and things like that. So I'm just curious. You mentioned your daughter at the beginning, so I'm just curious how that journey's been with raising her in an environment of three principles thinking.
No, thank you. That is a brilliant question. I love that question. I'm so happy you asked it because I wouldn't have spoken about it otherwise. But yeah, so I am so grateful for the principles on this level all the time. So my daughter is now almost 21. She is at university, and I learned about the principles when she was, I don't know, I want to say 8 or 9. I don't know. Or something like that, 8 or 9 or something. And it completely changed the way in which I parented. And I'm so grateful for that. So, and I used to teach parenting courses at one time. Actually, I forgot to say that, based on the principles. And there is a beautiful, beautiful book by a guy called Jack Pransky called Parenting from the Heart, which I would highly recommend. I don't know if anyone has read that here, but it is a really, really beautiful book, and it completely turns on its head what most people think parenting is about. So when I read that book, what I gleaned from it was that my job as a parent was to connect my daughter with her innate wisdom in a palpable way so that she would know how to access it when I wasn't around. And that became my orientation with her. And as a result, I would say that my daughter is very self-resilient. She is. And she listens for her instincts. And she knows that thought is creating her reality. She can tell. She will say to me sometimes, like, I might speak to her because her life at uni is really kind of busy. And I might, university, and I might say to her, how are you doing, darling? And she'll go, oh, well, I'm feeling, I'm feeling, a bit kind of flat today, but I know that that's just my state of mind because I'm tired. Like, thank goodness she knows that. Like, what a complete gift to know that. And in terms of while she was growing up, we never had that kind of, we had a very lovely transition through the teenage years. Mm. And my friends are very curious about this, because I'm kind of one of the only people I know who've had such a consistently harmonious relationship with their child. And what I put that down to is my understanding of the principles. And let me give you an example. So when Tara would come home from school, and let's say she was in a grumpy mood, when she walked in the door, I would look at her state of mind and I would respond to her state of mind. So if I'd say to her, hi, darling, how was your day at school? And she'd go, or something like that. I didn't take it personally. Because I could see that her state of mind was low. Do you understand what I mean by that, Greg?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I would look to the state of mind. And because of what I know about state of mind, because I know that thought is transitory, that our state changes, I knew that it would pass. And sometimes I would look at her and I would think, what's the best thing to do here? Should I just give her some space and allow her to kind of recalibrate? Or does she need a hug? Or does she, So that meant that we didn't get into arguments that escalated very quickly all the time. Another thing is that I really listened to her. And what do I mean by that? I listened to her with the intention of really understanding her. I didn't listen. I mean, I'm not a saint. So there were times when obviously I didn't do this. But for most of the time, to the best of my ability, I really tried to listen to her, to understand her reality, to understand where she was coming from, to understand, I wasn't listening to judge or to teach or to criticize. I was really listening to, as I said, to understand. And the thing that is so beautiful about listening to understand somebody is, well, there's lots of beautiful things about it. It creates a very, very powerful connection, just does, without anything happening. But it also, that space that you give to that person allows them to hear their own wisdom. And that's what I think is the most beautiful thing about it. And so listening in that way is profoundly connecting and profoundly healing. Is there anything else you'd like to ask, Greg?
No, that makes a lot of sense to me. I've become aware that I've wrecked a lot of great listening moments by turning them into teaching moments myself. So that's something I've started recognizing in my own parenting and trying to catch myself. So
wonderful.
Very, very helpful. Thank you.
That's fine. But I'm grateful every day. Like there's a word, so Julian and I are both Jewish, right? And there's a word called dayenu, which is a Hebrew word, and it means that would have been enough, right? So with my daughter, with the principles, if the only thing that had happened was the way in which it transformed my ability to parent, dayenu. That's how grateful I am for that.
That's beautiful. I don't know what you got out of that, Greg, but I'm not even a parent, and I got a lot out of that. I want to speak to something that I think Greg was touching on to, and also just maybe people here may be part of this conversation in hearing around. Some people come with the struggle of disability. Some people come with the struggle of grief, or the challenge of how to handle the day-to-day workings of what you actually are pointing people to. And I'm wondering what you would say to them in seeing that, and all that you've just said around children, and but what about the parent who's in that place, or the business owner, or the person who is in a place of working with disability on any level? And there's so many, Claire, that I'm sure you have the opportunity to work with. And the stories of hope are pointing in that direction. What would you say to them? Excuse me. Does that make sense? Did I make that direct enough? Or
No, I didn't understand. I'm sorry.
okay. So if someone came to you, I know, because I'm feeling into my thinking here. If someone came to you in the struggle, in the spin of what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I've.
Do you mean generally in life? Because I don't think the context makes any difference. You see, I think the principles are principles because the context is just the form.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Maybe.
Sorry, carry on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, working with people who are looking after family members with either disability or illness is a very new field for me. But so but I don't see any difference. If you were to say to me, if we kind of go upstream with it a bit, take it away from the context, and I don't even know if I can answer this question, but I'm going to try.
Well,
but if you were to say, no. But if you were to say to me, what would you say to anyone who came to you who was struggling?
Yeah.
That kind of makes more sense to me as a question.
Beautiful.
If we looking at the principles, if you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
And struggle, as far as I can see, struggle always comes from being out of alignment with your true nature. Like that's the easiest way of saying it. Because when we're and what do I mean by true nature? So when we're connected to our wisdom and the totality of our being, in other words, the fact that we are psycho-spiritual people having a human experience, there is very little that we can't face. I think we are innately resilient. In other words, we have the ability to bounce back innately. It's something, we don't have to learn it, but that's how we live. That's one of our capacities. And struggle only comes when we forget that, I think. And we think it's all on us. Most people struggle when they get very kind of insular and isolated in their thinking and think it's on them, and believe their insecure, emotionally laden thinking. There's nothing, and also another thing people do that gets them into serious deep water is that they kind of project into the future. So with most of my clients, they're not actually struggling in this very moment.
Right.
Like in the here and now.
Yes.
But they spend a lot of time struggling, thinking about what might happen. Or how am I going to cope with this? Or how am I,
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I work with the three principles as my way of communicating with the people I work with on a professional level, but I'm very, very open to many different ways. There's many, many different ways of pointing to the same thing. So, for example, Eckhart Tolle talks about the power of now, and the reason he talks about the power of now is because there is a truth in that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know enough about the power of now and how he teaches it to comment any further, but I'm not interested in the dogma. Somebody can use whatever dogma or whatever way to point to something that they feel comfortable with. What I'm interested in is what's being pointed to, what's essential, what is true, for want of a better word. And I'm fascinated by how many, many different traditions can come together in the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You find elements of the same truths everywhere. And to me, that's kind of endlessly fascinating, because what I make up about that is that means that there must be something in it.
Mm-hmm. It's not the words or the form in which it comes.
Yeah.
You know, we often talk about people's understanding of shamanic, or maybe EFT, or they're in Buddhism, or they're in, you know, whatever form it takes. But it's all about what's past that form, what's underneath those words. It's all pointing in the same place.
Yeah.
Mm.
So in answer to your question, if someone came to me and they were very stressed, I'd help them. I would try and point them back to who they really are.
In this moment to moment.
Well, eternally,
Yeah.
you know, over lifetimes.
Yes.
I personally believe that we live more than once.
Yeah.
But that's just my belief system.
Yeah. Sharon, hi, hon.
Hi.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Claire.
Nice to see you. Sorry, Sharon and I are friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been, I just so love listening to you. I always do. And Kelly, thank you for bringing Claire. And I just, I was struck early on in your talk when you spoke about sharing, and you just came back to it, but that it's not about the form, and what I heard in the beginning of your share, in the beginning of you talking, was you showing up with what you see and what's touched you, and being in that space with another being. And then it came up again, when you talked about working with Aaron and then working with Michael Neal and differences in form. But what I heard is, it's not like you were teaching Aaron. You weren't teaching Aaron's teaching when you were with him, and then able to change to Michael's teaching, because it's all pointing in the same direction. What I hear is you show up authentically with what you've seen and with what's touched you. And for me, that's always such a beautiful reminder about just how to be in life. And then the form goes away. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious. How I've seen a bit of both of their sharing, but I think it's delightful. It's like you say, it's like delightful for me to listen to Eckhart Tolle and see how he enters that space and see what comes through him in that space. So if you want to share more about that, how you've seen it show up through you and how it's changed or whatever, I'd love to listen to it. But I think at the heart of that is just this echo that keeps coming back, that what comes through is what you see about that space and who we really are. So yeah. I love the refrain, and thank you.
Oh, thank you. I think essentially for me, it just gets simpler and simpler. It feels like a stripping away. In the beginning, I really thought it was about how well I articulated, as I said. And that's quite stressful. In some ways, that's, that's a lot, but yeah, it just becomes simpler and simpler, because I think it is really simple. There's a quote that I wish I'm so bad at remembering quotes properly, so please forgive me, and maybe somebody who's got access to the internet, well, they can tell me what the real quote is. But Carl Jung said something like, learn all the techniques, learn all the techniques, but when you're with another person, just connect with them. So even he was saying that years and years and years ago. I mean, for me, nothing trumps just sitting down with another human being and listening and connecting.
Mm-hmm. It was said in a class I was in recently. Thank you, Sharon, for that conversation. It was said in the class that I was in recently that we become the closest to spirit in birth and in death.
Mm.
And the connection of being with a brand new baby. Of course, there's no words happening. We're not teaching, guiding, or we're just really experiencing that. And when it comes to death, often for me anyway, when I was with my grandmother, there were no words, there was nothing shared. But I felt closer to her in just listening to her breath than I did in many conversations that we had over the course of our time together in life.
So beautiful.
Hi, Tom. Lovely to see you.
Hi, Kelly. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Tom.
We met briefly last year. I was in Rohini's program,
Aha.
and you came and talked. So it's so
Yeah,
lovely to see you.
Rohini and I did Super Coach together.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we did
Yeah.
that Super Coach together.
Yeah.
We became good friends. We've been good friends ever since. She's amazing, amazing, amazing woman.
Yeah, she is. She is. I wanted to ask you about what you said about, pointing people to the spiritual nature of life. And if you could say a little bit, like when I hear those words, it means something. But I'm kind of curious, what could you just talk a little bit about what is the spiritual nature of life, or of us as you see it?
I think that I'm more than just my physical body. I think that, I don't know if you've ever seen that film, 21 Grams.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a spiritual essence which carries through lifetimes. I think, and notice I'm saying I think because this is all my belief system.
Yeah.
And I'm very aware of that. But because thought creates your experience, this is how I experience life. But so my experience of life is that, I am in a physical form, and that's great because it allows me to interact with the world, but it is definitely not the totality of my being.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen, Tom? Sorry,
No, that's
I haven't
great.
got my glasses on. What
okay.
have you seen, Tom?
Well, first of all, thank you for that, because I just love looking in that direction. And it's very similar. It's a little nebulous, but it's realizing that there's that spiritual to me means like the experiential nature of life. So I experience my thoughts, I experience my emotions, I experience my body, experience the world, but there's something there that's experiencing it all. And that to me is the essence. And then the true nature of that is whatever that is something that is good, is wise, is beautiful. And that's where the nature comes in. So the spiritual nature is also beautiful and good. And then, we have this experience, as you say, where we get the whole range of life happening.
Thank you. And
yeah.
agreed.
Yeah.
I was just curious to hear. I
Yeah.
think, and then there's been a couple of times in my life where I've been lucky enough to have a very, like a real experience of, I don't even know what to call it, I don't know what to call it. So I'll just have the talk about it. So once was, and you might laugh at this, but once I was in New Mexico. I remember I said I went traveling around the world, so this was part of that. So I was in New Mexico. I was actually sitting on a beach in Bali, and I was reading a book by a woman called Chris Griscom, and it was about past life regression. And I got so curious and so taken by what she said that I got on a plane and I went to New Mexico, which is where she was working. And I had a series of past life sessions. And in one of those sessions, I went into this beautiful place that is so hard to describe, but essentially I'll do my best. But basically I felt like I was surrounded it was very, very bright, a kind of bright white space, completely benevolent, and completely peaceful, completely calm, and felt, for want of a better word, like home. So I feel very lucky to have had that experience. And then there was another time when a friend of mine said to me, "You should listen to this Indian chant." Right. So at the time, my husband was watching football with my daughter actually, and I didn't want to watch the game, and so I thought, oh, okay, I'll listen to this Indian chant, and I put my headphones on and I was listening to it, and it vibrationally, I could feel something happening in my body. It didn't particularly feel comfortable, but it felt like it was some kind of rebalancing that was happening. And then after a while, after that rebalancing, I fell into this space where I knew that everything was one. It wasn't an intellectual knowing. I saw, or I experienced the oneness of life. I experienced the oneness of life. I mean, very, very profoundly lucky again. And then afterwards, after doing this, I went back to, the football match had finished by then. And I went back to join my husband and my daughter, and they were watching the news at the time. And people were talking about the world as different countries. And it seemed ridiculous to me at that point. It seemed ridiculous that human beings had chosen to carve up our beautiful planet into countries and put up boundaries and make rules and all that. I just really saw the ridiculousness of it. And then I felt really sad. But yeah, so I've had glimpses. I have had glimpses, but I forget.
Yeah.
I go back to sleep.
Right. That kind of seems to be the nature of our life here too. We go back to sleep and then we wake up.
Yeah.
We go back to sleep, we wake up.
Yeah.
But it's all okay underneath.
Our wisdom keeps going, oi. Oi.
Exactly. Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Claire. It's awesome to see you. Thank you.
Thank you for asking the question.
Yeah,
thanks, Tom. Great question. So how about anybody else? Anything coming up for this amazing group, tribe, family?
Xander, I'm really curious. Where are you sitting? Are you in Switzerland? No. Oh, you've got a backdrop.
Yeah.
Is that a backdrop? Okay.
It's a green screen.
Okay. So that's so beautiful. I've got it on, obviously, on gallery view, so it's all very teeny, and I don't have my glasses on. I could, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Everybody comments about Xander's patch-up, don't they? They really do, no matter where you're at, eh?
Yeah, I'm going to get rid of it. It's showing too much attention.
We were talking about it before you came into the room, Claire.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's a drawing feature. We were saying his sweater was appropriate due to the snow in the background. Well, how does everybody feel? Yeah, Marlene, hi.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Claire, I'm a little envious of your you have been able to study directly with both Michael Neal and Aaron Turner. And so thank you for being so generous with your wisdom and your insights. I'd like to remind people that the Three Principles Global Community has an amazing apprenticeship program right now. And so if anybody's interested in delving deeper into learning and grounding in the principles, I would highly suggest you seek that out.
Mhm. Thanks
I'm
for
sure,
sharing that, Marlene.
I'm sure that's amazing. I'm sure that's amazing.
Yeah.
I know I am really, really lucky.
Mhm.
I am really, really lucky. And imagine, I mean, I learned so much being on faculty for both of them for a number of years. So, you know, and so much. And I saw, and every year, both courses would evolve and shift and change. And yeah, it's just really amazing. Really, really, really amazing. And thank you. I think you've said some, am I going to get this right? No, I'm not sure. Sorry. I thought maybe you commented on the almond tree, but I'm not sure if it was you or somebody else. So forgive me. Like on Facebook. I'm not very good at Facebook and all those things.
I'm always commenting.
Are you part of the 3PGC?
I am, yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I've been in the
Oh,
program for about a year and a half now. And it's like I teasingly say I'm gonna stay an apprentice practitioner because the program is so amazing. It's like I don't want to graduate.
I would say one thing though. So I did a lot of, so I obviously studied with Michael, and then I studied with Aaron, and then I also studied with Linda Pransky, and then I've also spent some time with Elsie.
Nice.
So I've spent a time with, and I also spent a bit of time with Dickon. So I spent time with a lot of people, which has been really amazing. And there came a point where I had to stop and say, okay, what have I seen for myself? Like what's mine? What do I know? Because I think the thing is that there's a tendency to think, oh, I need to just learn a bit more. Oh, I haven't seen enough. Oh, if I just spend time with such and such a person, then I'll be good enough. Then I'll be ready. But actually, I don't remember Sid ever saying, you need to go study with anyone. I don't think that, I don't, as far as I know, think he said that. I could be wrong. But I think what he said was, listen to what I'm saying. Hear something. When you hear something, go live your life and share what you've seen. Well, no, but if you want to practice, go share what you've seen.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. I think that's I do have a tendency to want to learn more and more and more and never be quite ready.
Yeah, that's a very classic one. And people make money out of that. But probably shouldn't have said that. Anyway, but
It's
you know,
true. It's like,
but,
you know,
but I think you are enough.
Mm-hmm.
You are enough. You were born enough. Like if you, like what Tom was saying, following on from what Tom and I were talking about, you came into the world enough. What did Sid say? Something like everyone's sitting in the middle of enlightenment, but they don't know it.
Yeah.
So we're probably bastardizing a quote again, but but something along those lines. And if there was one thing I would like everybody to see, I would love people to see that.
Mm-hmm.
That would make a huge difference to the world. I mean, I agree that with the other quote that I probably get wrong, something about if everyone learned not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. There's that quote. And also that coupled with, if everybody knew that they were enough, if everybody really saw that they already had within them everything they will ever need, that would change the world.
it's beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks, Marlene. Thanks so much. That's a great conversation, what you just had. And I'm going to go to Pamela. Hi, Anne. Welcome to see you. Good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Claire.
Hello, Pamela.
Hi, good morning. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the almond tree and the way you work with Julian and your clients or participants or, yeah.
Okay. So the almond tree is definitely a labor of love. Julian and I did a lot of research before we set up the almond tree into what was available in terms of well-being support for people looking after family members with disability or illness. And to our surprise, what we found is there are lots and lots of really amazing organizations, but doing incredible things, but they tend to have like the odd well-being course. And we were like, hey, what about if we set up something that's all about well-being? So because we both have very busy lives other than the almond tree, it is definitely evolving quite slowly. But the way in which we work together is we do what occurs to us. So at the moment, it occurs to us to do the stories of hope. At the moment, both of us are getting to grips with social media and all that kind of stuff. We're also in the process of writing a specific, because we basically very quickly got quite a large mailing list, which is wonderful, from the series that we did with Linda. We did a talk at the conference called Looking Beyond Physical Diagnosis, and that was, I think, to all of our surprises, really well received and continues to be watched online. And so that's why we then did the series. And then when as we got our mailing list, we asked people what they wanted, and one of the things people wanted was an online course. So we're in the process of writing an online course specifically for that audience. That's Julian, Linda, and I.
Thank you.
So it's very much evolving step by step. Did I answer your question?
Yes, definitely. I ask it because of my own family situation and family members with severe disabilities and in between. And I think that's very valuable to, I don't know if you're focusing on the caregiver or the
Yes.
Yeah.
At the moment we are.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll expand, but we realized that we couldn't cover everybody at once.
Yeah.
I know that kind of flies in the face of what I said before about struggle, but it seemed that there was a slightly different conversation.
No, I think that sounds wonderful. Thank you so much.
And if you haven't seen, if it's something that's of interest to you, it's all free. So I know Kelly mentioned in the blog a bit that she wrote about me, about the stories of hope, but there's also the webinar series, Looking Beyond Diagnosis.
Okay.
It's posted, Pam, up on the page. You'll see it, Stories of Hope, on the Kind Mind Academy page.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one thing, but the webinar series that we did that followed on from the conference is a 3-part, or actually 4-part webinar series that's free to access, with Julian, Linda and I both talking really personally about our experience. And obviously it's all very different. I'm talking as the disabled person, and Julian's talking as the parent, and Linda's talking as the spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And how would that? Is that
it's on the page, but it's long. It's when was that, Claire? Can you tell me?
June.
So it is on my page, but you'd have to scroll all the way down. Or where would she find it quicker with?
So she would go, if you go to the almondtree.org.
Okay.
And then you look up, there's a tab for Looking Beyond Physical Diagnosis. You have to put in your email address for that one. That's just because we're trying to know who's been there and stuff like that.
Okay, so I'll find the Stories of Hope and the webinar series on.
So the webinar series is called Looking Beyond Physical Diagnosis.
Okay, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Pam. Thomas is in the house and up on deck. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks so much. And Claire, I have to say it's the first time I've heard you speak, and it's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I wish I could come a bit earlier than I did. I've been trying to think about how to actually articulate my question, and I'm not even sure if I have it yet, but I'll just go for it and see what happens. I've also had glimpses to this beautiful oneness, and even a very similar thought about why are there borders? You know, why are there countries? Why are there separations? In time of deep connectivity and connection, it's almost like you forget about your individual nature and you just feel part of this great oneness, an amazing feeling. I'm just wondering how you balance that with your belief about living many lives as an individual relative to that great oneness. Do you sense where I'm pointing to? I'm not sure if I even do, but
no, absolutely.
Maybe you'd want to have a go at it.
I'll have a stab at it. Thank you for the question and great accent. Sorry. But I don't see the two being in conflict to one another. It makes sense to me that we have our own individual form, because we are all experiencing our own individual lives. But at the same time as that, we are part of something bigger than ourselves. And because I think of my spiritual essence as being, so for me, there's a separation between my physical flesh, my body that ages and changes and all that kind of stuff, and eventually will no longer be in this form, and my spiritual nature, which I think is eternal. Again, my thoughts, my belief system.
But what I mean is the spiritual essence of us, what we are, is universal to all of us. Mm-hmm. In other words, we are all part of the same energy. So when you say we live many lives, do you believe that you as an individual consciousness will live many lives, or do you believe just that universal consciousness is living another life, but it's not necessarily Claire Schutz? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, and definitely not Claire Schutz. So because I don't remember I don't remember any past lives consciously.
Me either.
So, but I think that there's a spiritual essence that is eternal. So I don't know. I would be making it up, Thomas. That I could make it. I totally making it up, but I could make up that when we die, we go back to source, and then when we're ready to have another life, we go into a body, and then we, But I don't know. I would be making it up. But to me, they're not in conflict, because it's just a different form of the same energy. It's the same energy taking a form.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And just because I said that's I'm not right. That's what occurs to me, but who knows? I don't really know.
Thanks, Thomas. I just want to add that Mika said matter in its highest form is energy, and energy transforms and does not die. Great point, Mika. Thank you for sharing. And Thomas, thanks for the great question. I really like that question. Bill's in the house. Welcome. You're muted, my friend. You got to click that mic.
I've heard you before, Claire, and I find that this space that you talk about, I think what comes for me is that when I'm in the presence of someone and there's two ways. When I want to be more like them in the form, I get triggered, and that's not so pleasant for me. But when I forget about me and I'm loving where it's like it's so automatic. I just love what I'm feeling about them and whatever they're doing, even beyond their words. It's just a feeling. And then it's when I forget about me. To me, it's just this acceptance of life the way it is. I just keep coming back to that. And that's when I've had those glimpses of everything's just right the way it is. And I just don't have to do anything about it. And what I also feel, some people I love being in there, being around them. Their energy, they may think certain ways. I don't sometimes even pay attention to what they're saying. It's just that there's something so nice, just the feeling they have about life, the way they're enjoying life. So I think it's this, when a person is so okay with exactly where they are, and they don't need to, they just love it. And I think that's what I feel. And so at times when I slip out of that and think, now, what is this space you're talking about? And then I realize, wow, I love it when I'm coming from there. So I guess just accepting this moment, it just seems to keep coming back to that. I don't know as I have really anything new to say, but I just feel like I wanted to connect up with that again, the feeling that I enjoy having, and I see other people enjoying having that feeling. But thanks the way you do it.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for sharing. We have time for one more, and that is Natasha. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Claire.
Hi.
Lovely. I was also on Rahini's course last year and had the privilege of sitting with your glorious presence that you have. And I love sitting here listening to you. Just sitting in don't want to sound cliche, but it's just a beautiful feeling. And whilst you've been talking in the questions, I've had popcorn going off in so many different directions. I wanted to ask you so many things. And if I can, I'd like to ask you two things. And one is, or do I want to ask you that? No. What's come through in the last 10 minutes as you were talking is, I work in businesses as a coach, and mainly in businesses actually. And like you, spent a lot of time in my old way of coaching, and then just naturally came across this amazing understanding, and then couldn't not come from that place. I couldn't come from that model place anymore. And I've been wanting to maybe work with teenagers. I don't know why. I have a teenage daughter. And as I was sitting here listening to you, because I'm like, how am I going to do that? And can I do that? And what would I say? And all of the noise. But what just came to me is, and I just wrote it down, and I never write when I'm listening, is what if I just went to schools and just asked, where does our well-being come from? And start there. Now, that might sound really silly and simple, but
sounds perfect.
Like,
sounds perfect.
Yeah, it just sounds true to me. Just start from there, and who knows where it goes. But that was just, I've been thinking about this for 2 years, you know, and really procrastinating on it and just sticking with the businesses and what I know. But I think I'm just nervous to go and have these conversations. Yet I have a teenage daughter who comes back home and says, this person's got OCD, mummy, this person's got an eating disorder, this person's got hurting themselves. And you think, you're 12. And so to talk to their well-being, just, it excites me. So I wanted to share that for some reason, that through listening. So I don't know what you heard or what even I said, but.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it doesn't sound silly at all. It sounds perfect. And I can tell you one last story. So I once went into a school in England, which was specifically for children who had been banished from the school system. So it was full of all the kids that none of the other schools wanted. And this school was so grim that it had a nickname called the Prison on the Hill. I know. And we went in there. I went in with this amazing woman called Jackie Moses. If any of you have ever come across her, she's just like an incredible woman. And we went in, and we were given a class to work with, and we said we didn't want to know anything about them because we didn't. And unbeknownst to us, next door, we had apparently the really naughty ones. And unbeknownst to us, next door to us, they had their squad of bouncers ready to come in and break up any fights or anything that happened. But we didn't know about any of this. So we just sat with them and we listened and we loved them. We went in them. The first thing we said to them was, thank you for coming, and joining us. You are not in trouble. We're here because we know a few things that we'd love to teach you that you might find helpful. And we did teach them the principles. But what we did more than that was just be there, not judge them, and love them. And listen to them and respect them. And actually Jackie and I spoke about this at one of the principals conferences. So there's actually a recording where we go into this in more depth. But and what happened was they heard something and their behavior changed. And because their behavior changed, that changed the whole kind of culture of the school. Because we were working with, I think, 1 or 2 year groups, and basically the people who had been causing the disruption started to behave differently. And so those 2 year groups went from being like the least well-performing year groups to some of the top performing year groups. And literally all we did was love them unconditionally. So you can go in and say, where does your well-being come from, or whatever occurs to you, right? But I just want to repeat something that I said earlier, which is it's not in the form.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I love that. And I think I'm with you. It's more of a way to talk to somebody, to get me into list, to be able to listen and share from love. And I think I've been caught up in that. Like I'd love just to sit and listen and love. And I mean, what a lucky thing to be able to do, right? Like you got to pinch yourself sometimes. If it's really that simple that I can talk from my grounding and what I know, that fills my heart, because it's like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah. And you can change people's lives forever. Like you talk to kids and, you know, it's brilliant because they can take it forward for the rest of their lives. So I feel inspired when I hear your vision. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, and I think because most people I talk to are 40 plus, I'm like, I need to get in earlier. Like I wish I would have known this when I was 11, 12, 13, 20, 30, even 35. I'm showing my age, but I wish I would have known that then.
Yeah.
So thank you. That was just a glorious, glorious session. Thank you so much.
It's been so lovely to be here with everyone.
Yeah. It's been lovely to have you. Natasha, thank you for that conversation and the insight about how simple it is. How simple it is. Someone once said to me, who am I to argue when wisdom drops in? Who am I to argue when that stuff comes in? Who am I to argue? So I just loved the simplicity there. Claire, I just want to thank you on behalf of, everybody here, but just first myself, for coming and sharing your wisdom. And this is a labor of love, folks. People are doing this out of the kindness of their heart, and Claire is no different. And I'm so grateful that I can offer something like this, and you. And so thank you very much for being here with all of us. Just before we go, we'll open our mics in just a second. I just wanted to let everybody know, next week we have Sherry Ray straight from the beautiful Texas. So I would love for you to be a part of that conversation. But for this week, let's open our mics and send Claire a little love. And do I need to do that for you? No.
Thank you, gorgeous.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you,
Claire.
Claire.
That was awesome.
Thank you, Claire. All the best.
Oh, thank you. It's been wonderful to be here with you. An honor. Thank you for inviting me, Kelly.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Claire and Kelly. That was really beautiful. Awesome session.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks, Kelly.
Bye, everybody. Be well and be kind till we see you again. Bye now.